Hello friends, very good morning to all of you. So we are in PF31. So today we'll discuss ROPC grant workflow, that is resource owner password credential grant. So we'll just draw the diagram and try to understand the workflow, and then just going to register the client in PingFederate, and then we can test using Postman. So let's begin. We are in PF31 and let's discuss resource owner password credential grant. So this is the flow diagram, but before that let's quickly discuss that what is ROPC. So the resource owner password credential is nothing but a username and password can be used directly as an authorization grant to obtain an access token. The credentials should only be used when there is a high degree of trust between the resource owner and the client. For an example, you can say client is a part of device operating system or a highly privileged application, and when other authorization grant types are not available, such as authorization code. If you have the option to use authorization code, go for that. If not, then you can have an option if as I told, it's if it is having a high degree of trust between the resource owner and the client. That's why in this diagram also you can see it's mentioned as a first party apps or highly trusted applications in the client. Even though this grant type requires direct client access to the resource owner credentials, the resource owner credentials are used for a single request and are exchanged for an access token. This grant type can eliminate the need for the client to store the resource owner credentials for future use. Right? In this case, like, it's basically eliminating the need for the client to store the resource owner credentials for future use, because by exchanging the credentials with a long-lived access token or refresh token. Okay, so here you can see that, like in this workflow diagram, as you have the resource owner is just like in the first option, you can see maybe it's clicking on login to the application redirect the resource owner to the authorization server token endpoint. Okay, not to the authorization, it's a token endpoint. And what parameters it's sending? It's sending the grant type equals to password, the username, password, client ID, client secret, that is a client credentials, you can say, user credentials, grant type equals to password, scope, and redirect URI. This parameter has been sent where submitted. It's a HTTP post call and submitted to the token endpoint of authorization server, PingFederate authorization server, token endpoint of PingFederate authorization server. Then PingFederate verifies the credentials and directly issues access token to the client. Now, once the client have the access token, it can just try to use the it can basically use access the API, okay, resource API. Okay, so this is the workflow diagram, and let's quickly have a look on the PingFederate side, what configuration we need to do, and then we can test using Postman. Let's quickly go to the PingFederate. In the PingFed side, before registering the client, we need to make some changes also. I'll show you what changes. Let's first go to OAuth and create a new client. It's taking more time. Okay, it came now. Let's click on add client and then give the client an ID is ROPC and name also ROPC. Okay, client authentication, you can just put a client secret also, or you can put none also. So we can go for the client secret. Okay, that's fine. And then click on change secret, and then you can able to generate the secret. Just copy this value somewhere. We can copy it in our notepad. Okay, and then you have the client secret retention, leave these all options. Redirect URI, again give the same for the Postman callback address. Just add this redirect URI, click add, and then just bypass the authorization approval to in this case it's not required because consent will not ask. Allowed grant types, you can just choose as a resource owner password credentials. Okay, this option, and then you have the require offline access scope, okay, This is the default setting like this. This default setting you can just leave this, and yeah, the access token manager you can choose as a test ATM. Okay, and yeah, so grant type you chosen already ROPC, and the access token manager as a test ATM, and other options you can leave this, okay, as a blank, as a default, and go for next. So there's two things: grant type you chosen, and yeah, like the access token manager. And then go to the risk level, put HTML form OpenDJ as the application authentication level as we defined. Click on add, click on save. Okay, so this connection will be ready, it's replicated already, but we are not able to test right now. Why? Like, let's go now to authentication tab, go to OAuth, and then you have, if you remember that I discussed while we are configuring the OAuth, in the OAuth implementation section I discussed about policy contract grant mapping. So there we have an option as a resource owner credential grant mapping. So we need to update this, like we need to basically complete this mapping, then only we can able to use. So what it says: manage the mappings from credential validated instances into the persistent grant contract, as we did in the APC, policy contract grant mapping. Password validator instances mapped here will be used to authenticate username password pairs for the OAuth resource owner password credential grant. So in the resource owner you are passing the username password now. This mapping is going to help to verify that credentials. Just click on here, choose one of the PCV. Let's choose OpenDJ PCV. Click on add mapping, leave the attribute source, go to next. In the user key, choose as a, we can choose password credential validator, and the value here maybe we can choose as a username. Okay, yeah, that's fine. I think we can choose password credential validator as a source, and we can choose value as a given name, mail, username. Okay, that's fine. And let's go to next, go to next, and let's save this. Okay, so we have chosen as a user key as a username. Okay, that's basically used for the verifying. Okay, it's used to authenticate username password pairs for the OAuth resource owner password credential grant. Okay, now let's go and do the cluster management. Replicate. It's done. So yeah, so two things we did, right? Once we basically created like resource owner credential grant mapping. Okay, and then we have just created like onboarded a connection, OAuth connection. We basically registered a ROPC connection. Now let's go to Postman. Let's use same place, clear the cookies, and just change the name from implicit to ROPC. Okay, choose grant type as a password credentials. Okay, grant type is equal to password, we can say as a ROPC, resource owner password credentials. Access token URL is fine. Client ID, just update from, you copied it. Okay, I think it should be the ROPC only, I put it right. So ROPC, copy the client secret value. Copy the client secret value, go back to the Postman, put it in the client secret. In the client ID, just put ROPC. Username password you need to give it here. So let's give, we just selected as a PCV as a OpenDJ, right? So for OpenDJ only we can give the ID and password. So you need to pass username here and password, right? So user credentials, client ID, client secret, scope, redirect URI, all those things you can pass. Okay, so token name, brand type, access token, client ID, secret. Yeah, okay, now let's click on get new access token. Failed. What happened? It says invalid grant. Description: no validator mappings configured. I check the like log in PingFed server log. I can see the, yeah, it says the same thing what we can see in the Postman console. Access token request exception, handling normal exception condition in token endpoint, org.society auth2 O.handles access token request exception, that is invalid grant. No validator mappings configured. So it looks we missed the validator mapping configured. So let's jump to PingFederate and close this console. So in PingFederate, what we did, we basically created the connection. We registered the ROPC connection, as we can see, and configured the values. That looks fine. And we have in the OAuth we have updated this resource owner credential grant mapping as a OpenDJ PCV to persistent grant. Okay, that's basically used for the verifying the user credentials. Now we need to perform one mapping here. Let's go to applications OAuth, and then you can see access token mapping. Click there, and then you mapped here the policy contract APC to the. You have done the mapping for the APC for the ATM that you created, access token management. For that you have done the mapping here using this authentication policy contract. Now let's go back to the context, and you can see you have the validator as a OpenDJ. So you need to do the mapping for this also. This validator we are using for the ROPC thing. So context as a validator, you can choose OpenDJ PCV, access token manager, choose test ATM, and click on add mapping. Okay, now just leave this add attribute source, go to next, and we can bring the values directly from the password credential validator. So phone number you can just give no mapping, not required. Email you can choose as a PCV, choose source as a PCV, and bring the value as a mail. First name choose PCV as a source and bring the value as a given name. Okay, and then groups you can put a no mapping, and last name you can choose as a password credential validator source, and you can just okay, last name also we are not having in the PCV, so let's make it as a no mapping this also. Subject we can bring as a username, source as a PCV, and value as a username, and same for the username also. Okay, this is the mapping we are doing for the validator OpenDJ. That's basically we are using in ROPC, in our ROPC case. Okay, so this is done. Now you can go for next and save this. Go to next. So this is the mapping, it's missing there. That's why it's complaining for the mapping part in the what we have seen in the Postman as well as in the logs. So it's done. Like now let's go to OAuth and go to access token mapping, and you can see we have the mapping for the validator OpenDJ also using access token manager test ATM. Okay, that's good. So there are two things you need to do for the ROPC. Three things I will basically say. You need to definitely register the client, one thing. Second thing, need to go to the authentication OAuth and update the resource owner password credential grant mapping. And the third thing is go to applications OAuth and complete this access token mapping for the validator OpenDJ. What is the validator you are using in the PCV? Whether it's simple username PCV, OpenDJ PCV, or any other kind of PCV with AGO ready PCV, any kind of that. Okay, now let's go back to the Postman. And yeah, so the error we have seen is the no validator mappings configured. So we have now mapped, we have done the mapping. Now let's clear the cookies, and the values is fine. We have the grant type, access token, URL, client ID, client secret, username, password, and other details are not required. Now click on get new access token. Okay, now we are getting the access tokens. That's a miss. So basically, yeah, that's why I told, like, we are just doing some troubleshooting also in this session, which is really helping you also to learn. Okay, so because troubleshooting just help us to learn some other things also apart from what we are learning. So just you can copy this access token and decode, and let's see the values. Okay, so token type bearer expires in 359, access token URI, client ID, client secret, grant type, password credentials, password, username, client authentication, header, scope, timestamp, and all. Okay, let's jump to that jwt.io and let's see the decoded form of this access token. Okay, so we have the header, algorithm, KID, PI, ATM, and the payload as a scope is nothing, client ID, ROPC, issue, PingFed learning, JTI. Subject as the Abhishek Arts 211@ident.com, first name Abhishek Arts, email, username, and expiry. Yeah, that's what we mapped in the access token mapping that we did. Basically, we are getting those values. That's you understand. So basically, yeah, we need to perform the mapping. So in ROPC that basically we missed. We have created the we went to the authentication OAuth, and then we updated the ROPC policy contract mapping. but we haven't updated the access token mapping that we need to do for the ROPC thing. Okay, that's a miss, and yeah, this is good. So yeah, this is fine. We are good with this ROPC. Now let's jump to the next section, is that is PF32. We have client credential grant. So yeah, let's jump to that section. Yeah, thank you.